Hi everyone. Right, I'm back here, but in a different capacity, not singing this afternoon, right? So anyway, welcome to this last panel discussion, and this panel is going to be slightly different because we've decided to adopt an open discussion, the real Davos style, Davos style panel discussion. Now this morning it was announced that the first panel was Davos, but they still presented at the rostrum, whereas I think in the Davos style is an open discussion, interaction between the panel members. Now we're starting a bit earlier than scheduled, so one of our speakers is not here yet, and I hope she doesn't mind that we have started earlier. It's supposed to start at 3:45, and she might just come at 3:45. And it's 3:25 now, so there's still 20 minutes to go. So shall we?
Yeah.
Why not? Shall we? Right. So, yes. So I'm very pleased to introduce the panelists, very distinguished panelists this afternoon. And you can read their full biodata in the leaflet in your in your little file. But to just introduce them briefly, we have on the extreme right Dato Satinah Saleh, a long-term official at the Ministry of Education for many, many years. And then after retirement, she is now in private education and also sits on the MPPK, the Advisory Council, appointed by the Prime Minister, right? So that's Dato Satinah Saleh. And on my right is Professor Rozainun of University Technology, Mara, right? And Professor Rozainun lectures in accounting, but with a bias towards education, Professor Rozainun, and has done a lot of research in school education, university education, and so on. And on my left is Miss Tham, all right, a veritable, all right, founder of several international schools, St. Mary, is it? Sri Mas, and Devi Mas, and lots of other affiliations that have to do with education. Welcome. And on my extreme left is Mr. Vincent Tham. Chian. Yeah, I'm confused. Right, between Anne and Vincent. Right, Mr. Vincent Chian. All right, the principal of Fairview International School. So, the last panelist is supposed to be Dato Freida Pilus, a well-known founder of Cempaka group of schools. So we have a bit of a heavy leaning towards international education, which is what the brief for this afternoon session is. Now, it's actually, the focus is on international education, but I think we have decided to start the discussion with a little bit of reference to the national education system. I'd like to say that my personal view, now I shouldn't be giving my personal view, but I will, all right, because I'm very opinionated, right? So anyway, you can disagree with me during question time. But I think that, or there is the perception, let me put it that way, that the mushrooming of international schools and private education opens up, doors to the elitist kind of education, where the public are prepared to pay more for excellence, in particular academic excellence for their children. All right, and the national schools now lag behind in terms of resources, in terms of facilities, and so on. They work within the constraints of big classrooms, You know, just now we heard that the science labs are not operating, so how can you have scientists who produce science-loving school children when the science labs are not working properly? If the science labs are not working properly in urban areas like Kuala Lumpur, can you imagine the dire situation in remote Sabah, Sarawak, and our own peninsula, Malaysia? So, you know, there is a perception that it is only widening the gap, all right, the education gap between the haves and the have-nots. And we shall call, you know, towards the end of this discussion, we shall call for some effective collaboration between private schools and public schools, so that there is a fairer distribution of resources, expertise, and so on. So without further ado, I'd like to address the first issue, which is the perceived. Again, I'm very cautious because I don't want to make it sound as though it's a judgment here. The perceived shortcomings of national schools, of the SK, Sekolah Kebangsaan, Sekolah Jenis Kebangsaan Cina, Sekolah Jenis Kebangsaan Tamil. Now, Sekolah Jenis Kebangsaan Cina has somewhat lifted their image. They are very popular, and you know, a lot of people send their children there now. But the Sekolah Kebangsaan and Sekolah Kebangsaan Tamil, Jenis Kebangsaan Tamil, are struggling to keep pace with the development of Sekolah Jenis Kebangsaan Cina and the private schools. All right. So, what is it? What is it that, or what are the factors that are driving parents away from the national schools, and why are they opting to put their children in the private schools? Now, Dato Satinah, perhaps you'd like to address that question or that issue.
Thank you. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good afternoon. Thank you, Dato Alima. Okay, as mentioned by Dato Alima, I've been in the Ministry of Education for a long, long time. As a teacher, as a lecturer, and senior officials, and also policy formulator. So to a certain extent, there's the shortcomings or whatever it is that has been happening in the system. I'm also responsible for that. I take that blame as well. And there have been a lot of talk, Dato Alima, that you did mention. I thought I would like to start it with some notion that has been taught even this morning about how the system has failed. And I even have friends that put it across to me to say that the education system in our country actually is totally a failure. I would like to actually, I'm not going to say that I'm being defensive, just because by virtue of me being in the Education Council now, but I like to be fair, I like to look at it as a journey. We have been actually in a long journey, starting from Razak report, Rahman Khalid report, and we have come up with so many strategic planning, and finally in 2012, we have the Malaysian Education Blueprint. Therefore, the system has worked at the right time during that time. But the system needs to be relevant, especially now. So perhaps there are a lot of loops, that I mentioned to you, a lot of loops and gaps that need to be put together. We need to sort of narrow it. If not able to close it, we need to do it. So the ministry is working hard, as Datin Azimah mentioned this morning. A lot of work is being put in, and also mentioned by my colleague, Dr. Rafi, being put in to put things in perspective again. But I would like to share 3 factors that actually is making the system not working as well as it should be. So when we did the review for the Education Blueprint in 2012, and I was very privileged because I was called back after my retirement to lead the project management office, the 3 factors that plays a very important role actually in why we are looking at the system not working as well as it should be. One, actually the factor of teacher, the quality of teachers. So we don't have the teacher quality in the sense that Teacher quality is not about qualification, it's also about delivery. How do you deliver your education, your learnings? And secondly, leadership, not only in school, but also in the district office, in the Ministry of Education, in also the state education. And the last one that I would also like to mention is commitment. Commitment from parents themselves. That also has become part and parcel of not only just the curriculum, I would say curriculum. We have fantastic curriculum that has been emulated by many countries. So then let me go back to the question that Dato was asking me. Why is it the choice for private school instead of government school? But actually the number of students in our private or international schools actually is very small. We have over 5 million students in the system from the public school, and we have only about 135,000 in the international or the private school using national curriculum. So it is below 3% basically. But however, because we allow education to be open for parents to choose, if they can afford to send their children to private school, let them be. So in fact, for me, I would say it is a lot better than the resources that is being used for children given to the children can be actually channeled to the public school again. So it is okay because I think I sit in the board of a couple of international schools.
I agree.
We can tell that basically, of course, international school will have only smaller number of students, like 25 students in a classroom, whereas in our public school we have about 40. So the choice, the parents who can afford it would send their children to private school. But I think that once again, we should not deprive children, because when you talk about democratization of education, it's allowing parents to choose where they want to send their children. Dato.
Yes, thank you, Dato Satinah. Perhaps Professor Rozainun, you'd like to add to that? The shortcomings of national schools that prompt parents to opt to put their children in international schools and private education.
Okay, thank you, Dato. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon. I'd like to answer that why international school and why now we see mushrooms of international schools coming up. I guess we go back to Country Macro's 4 A's just now. It's affordability. It's also the level of income that we have actually achieved and we are now better off. It's also the accessibility, as we see that more schools are open in terms of international and accountability and also autonomy. So there is development in that sense that is allowing for children, and I should say parents, because the children, they would follow what the parents ask them to do. So if they want us, or if the parents want their children to go to international school, then be it. If you can afford it, then why not? But I'd like to address on the perception, as we want to be safe in whatever we talk about. But the judgment is, yes, on the perception, judgment as to where we are now, why international schools, why the council is formed, which is fair. If I can take us back to the very basic, as in, my background is accounting, so we have substance over form. So which one is important? When we talk about substance, it's about the school curriculum, what the students are exposed to, and also Dato Satinah said very well just now on the quality. So those are basically the substance and the contents that we need in school. But what about support? So that is where the form would come in, which is equally to me as important. And when we do our performance report, we are always concerned with what is the end result, what is the profits in a business, but the direction is pointing towards substance over form. But today, it's substance equal form. So, they are both of equal importance. So a lot said today from this morning on learning and education, which is the source of development in any country. Lucky indeed, in our country, we are given this opportunity to grow. And it's like the sky is the limit, which I think is very good. And I believe in end-to-end approach. So what goes in, what happens in the middle, and what actually goes out. And I'm also teaching management accounting, to be exact. And I like to frame in a school as a process, and therefore there's input, process, and output. So academically, it sounds like, it's very academic and theoretical, isn't it? But even by practice, we have the raw material, therefore the input. Students, children coming in at zero knowledge. So they are put into that process, whether year 1, year 2, kindergarten, and then they go up until secondary, and then tertiary, university, and all that. Then that is the end result. So this is where the end result is very, very important. I see this as, if it's in the middle, then it's methods and expertise that we need to deploy and use. But at the end of the day, I think, look at ourselves. Here we are, we came from a particular school system, and we have graduated, and it's about us. So to the 4 A's just now, from Tasri Michael Yo, I would put it, all this is about us. So we have come from the, if I say, is it safe to say the lower level, as in primary, nursery, then we go up. And now we have come up to this far where we have actually gained a lot of knowledge, a lot of competencies, skills that we have over the years to share back. So if we say we need the 4 A's, do you remember what are the 4 A's? Affordability, accessibility, accountability, and autonomy. At the end of the day, it's about us. And look at Dato Satinah, if you don't mind. She has been called back. So there must be, expertise that we can contribute. So when we say about us, it's US, isn't it? What do you think U stands for? Any guess? Understanding. And what about S? It's about sharing. And it is because we have this circumference of people with that level of understanding that we are to share, and this is where we come. And this is, I'm sure, Dato Satinah and also Dato Halimah doing her part. And I'm sure all this include us. I mean, Dato Azimah, I know from how many years was it? 30, 40 years ago when we were in school. And she has come out from her specialization, and we are coming back to share. So it's basically about us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Professor Rozainun, for reminding the audience of what Senator Yusmadi said this morning, that we didn't suddenly come out of a vacuum. The national education system has developed from all these 50 years ago, right? And at each point there was substantive documentation, acts, education acts, Rahman report, Razak report, and so on, to fulfill the requirements and needs of that era, right? Yet, with every new Minister of Education, there are those daunting prospects of having to announce new policies, new programs, and the current Minister of Education is not free from that, all right? Because times are changing, student needs are changing. So, Dr. Freida, maybe I can address the next. You came late, right? So maybe we can refer to private, somebody in the private education to address the question of why you are so popular. What do parents say when they register their children at your school? What do they say is so great about your school that they want their children to be there?
How much time do we have? The list is quite long.
no, this is like, it's an open discussion.
Yeah, no,
So it's nicer if it's shorter, so
Yeah.
you have more discussion.
Okay. Why? Okay, I'm going to be very blunt here. Normally I start off with that because I tend to be very blunt. First and foremost, if you really look at private education and it being elitist, actually parents have been doing private education for a long, long time, way before the international schools opened its doors to Malaysians, because they were paying through their noses for tuition. That is that private education like this. So the minute the doors open to private education, allowing 100% of the school to be able to take Malaysian students, it just opened the floodgate. So they shifted, instead of going into private education, other tuition, they just decided to get the whole school system. So I would say that it's not just Malaysia, our region in Asia, there's this whole huge tuition culture going on. It's crazy. And then the next thing is this. When I talk about elitist education, it is actually when we bring in big names from overseas. They are looking for our students who can afford to pay, and also they also select the academically strong. That is where you have that separation of being elite. Otherwise, why parents choose an international education is that they don't want what is in the schools because it's just too old, just way too old. People talk about, every time we talk about private education or international education, they talk about, okay, what about leaving people behind? You know, for 800, 900 years, people have always been left behind. Yeah, there is that gap. In fact, right now, the problem is even greater because you have to decide. First, education has to be pushed into the future. Two is that the fact that you have those who don't have and can't keep up. So we have to decide, do we then hold back on moving into the future for those who need to catch up? Or do we push ahead, those who can afford to push ahead so that we move it into the future? And then we work another team of people, the government, to pull them forward. Because if we don't do something about it for this country, we're going to be left so far behind if we're afraid that we have a whole group of people lagging behind. And anyway, if you're dealing with the country, very often they have to see the success on a private side before you can even talk to the public side for anybody to listen. Okay?
Thank you. And you'd like to add to that, Vincent, or shall I pose another question to you?
You could pose another one.
Right.
Ms. Anne did it really, really well.
Right, yeah, perhaps we should, cover other factors. Yeah, some of the advantages of private education, international schools is better facilities, smaller classrooms, the same list of, special facilities and so on. So the children have, more time. The whole curriculum is completed, from 8 to 3, 8 to 4, and they don't have private tuition. But I bet you the parents still have private tuition for them at night, right? So that's the advantage of having access to money, all right? So you can give your children as much private tuition as possible. Now, I agree with you. There's always been the disparity because people are born unequal in all sorts of ways, all right? But, so the issue seems to be that the national schools have to catch up with the private schools, which is what the minister, the deputy minister, has just said. She said they're trying so hard to make Sekolah Kebangsaan the choice school for parents and so on. But it's a long catching up to do. What's your opinion on that, Vincent? Can they catch up?
Yeah, I do believe it's possible, but the greatest, I think somebody very wise told me once, a society is defined not by the great things that it does, but how it takes care of those who are the most vulnerable. And our family is defined about how you take care of the most vulnerable member of your family. That demonstrates strength. There are people that go forward, there are people that get left behind. But we need to make sure that we move together as a group. If we can't trust each other to take care of each other, and if I know that this, let's say we're a family, we're going to move forward, and I know that you will leave me behind at the first possible opportunity, I don't want to associate with this group because I won't feel safe. And if I don't feel safe, I don't want to be a part of this group anymore. And that's what destroys unity. So while at the same time we need to make sure we're driving forward, we still need to pay attention to those who are vulnerable. Maybe it's just not time yet. But I'd like to address a similar issue about why is it that we're having such difficulty moving forward? I do need a couple of minutes. I am going to run into a narrative. I need that clicker though. Do you want to hand me the clicker? Or do you want to press for me? I don't mind either way really. I can signal you. Clicker. Alright, I'll get started anyways. So we're an international school, about 40 years old, that do the IB system. We specialize in doing IB and IB. For those who don't know, the IB is a really international-based system with no national affiliations. Thanks, thank you. So press down here. Hey, okay. So we're about 40 years old. We've got some great academic results. I'm not going to read it off. You can come to our website and find it out. But we've got a lot of years of experience in the IB and succeeding at the IB. I believe the ministry are walking down that path as well with 10 NYP schools, many of whom we've helped as well. And I'm just going to jump forward. I think the future is actually really bright in a few ways. I'm going to just speak in terms of international schools because that's what I thought the topic was going to be about. From the year 2000 till now, we've seen a change in number of schools from 26 back then to 170 today. That is an incredible shift. Absolutely incredible. If this was any industry in the world, you'd straight away say this was an explosion. We have 71,000 students now from that census at least. This is only international schools, so it may be different from what Dato Satinah said just now, about 120,000. The rapid expansion of international schools in Malaysia is really great, actually. What we have is tons of infrastructure. We've got great market supply happening here. We've got a lot of awareness. We've got lots of countries now looking to us. Yes, we have an oversupply. There's a couple of teething issues, but what industry doesn't have these teething issues? At this point, really, I think our focus should be on growing the pie. Now, this pie, if you do that division, that's 400 students a school, and that isn't very much. Most international schools are built to 1,002. With 400 in one school, you know that you're not using 800 of those classrooms. But can we grow this pie? The only way we can grow this pie is by increasing educational standards. How do we do this? And I'll give you a really structured way of getting about this. There are two main things that I can draw from most of the educational forums, all that reading I've done. By the way, I come from a medical background. I was a psychiatrist at one point, and I'm also a teacher for biology and in the diploma program at TOK, so I walk in a very 1, 2, 3 fashion, so you'll forgive me if I'm a bit lenient. One, the international baccalaureate is the international standard of education. If you want to make a good international student, you've got to put him through a system that doesn't have nationalistic interests. You know the problem with the word international school and then saying the word British in front of it is it's not international, it's British. Now, if you want to call something an international school, then you do it international. You don't call it British International School and then say that's British, that's international, because, well, that's British International School then, isn't it? Apart from being an excellent educational program, it was designed independently of any national interests. Second thing, if you're a teacher researcher and you know your research, you know from John Hattie's research that teachers are the one that have the highest potential to improve student achievement. So what's the problem? If private industry has, all the answers and we know what to do, we just hire lots of great teachers, right? Let's just hire all the best expatriate teachers and put them in and then we have wonderful standards. The problem is cost. And you said you were blunt, I'm going to be on PC. Expatriate teachers are super expensive. And I just spoke to somebody earlier on today and I said, if you have a history teacher or social science teacher, Malaysian guy, non-Malaysian guy, expatriate teacher, and both of them are walking in to teach social inequality in their next class tomorrow, and they're discussing about how to do it together, and they're collaborating, and they both have the same degree. One gets paid 5, one gets paid 12. How can one not walk into the class and vomit blood right after that? At the hypocrisy of the situation. It is very, very hard. And this obvious situation is part of why we have all these teacher costs so high. If we rely on just hiring in good teachers, what we're going to get, higher teacher costs, higher operational costs, higher school fees, a smaller pie, you mentioned inaccessibility, non-inclusiveness, exclusiveness, it's just going to ruin the entire thing. So what's the answer? If we want to have high standards of education in our international schools, or any school, we need a sustainable, long-term, self-sufficient strategy. The answer? I'm going to throw this at you from my medical experience, and let's see whether you can catch this. Would you trust a doctor with your life if you knew that he didn't go through continuous professional development, he wasn't accredited by a professional body, he wasn't held to a professional code of conduct, and he wasn't liable for his actions and could be deregistered? Would you go to such a doctor? You tell him, I have possibly a heart problem, but I have no idea which stream you came from, and you could tell me anything you wanted to, and you couldn't be held accountable. You wouldn't walk near this guy. But yet, if our answer is no, would we put our children's future in the hands of somebody who isn't part of a professional body? Would you do it? A teacher should be respected as a professional and deserves a professional body. I call on the doctors as a good example, the Malaysian Institute of Accountants as a good example as well. Which professional body should we follow? Oh my gosh. If we know that the answer is a professional body to really get the standards up, who should we follow? The British, the American, the Canadian, the Australian, the Finnish? Should we follow somebody else? They are good, and all of them have their merits, but they are influenced by their own individual political agendas. Remember that each education system aims to produce good citizens for that country. That is the function of an educational system and an educational curriculum. This is what I would propose. Make an international educator professional body that adheres to international standards with accreditation requirements, a code of conduct, continuous professional development requirements, and disciplinary mechanisms. And once you've set that up, training programs to help anyone and everyone reach the standards so everyone can teach well. Not just a few people from a few places, not just those guys coming from a few countries, not just the people with enough money. Everyone. And what's already happening? In my school, we already hold people to the IB standard. I used the word standards before. We already hold them to the IB standard. We run a postgraduate diploma program delivered by the University College Fairview, our educational wing. A postgraduate diploma in education. And this is MQA accredited already. And we've got NARIC UK saying that our PGDE is equivalent to the UK PGDE. So a teacher graduating from our program can go to the UK and apply for the QTS using our PGDE. The standard equivalency is there. It's recognized by the IB already with such a high standard. The IB said you can get the IB educator certificate if you do this. And all of our teachers do this. They get it on scholarship for free while receiving a salary in 2 years' time. 100% Malaysian. We've already graduated 40 PGDEs. We've done a whole lot of other things as well. But we are already going through the system. What is, if you don't mind, I'll just do this last one here. This is the future that I suggest for us. A professional body made in Malaysia, training international teachers in Malaysia, exporting and improving educational standards across the globe, high quality education by Malaysians for the world. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Vincent. Now I'm not going to be blunt with you and ask you to define what you mean by citizens. You know, the ideal education or school should produce citizens of the universe. Now, I'm not going to stop you now to ask you to define that. but maybe later in a short while. But there was also a comment this morning that one of the shortcomings in international schools is that there is a lack of teacher training. Would you like to comment on that, Dato Freida? Maybe not in Sri Cempaka.
I'm at a disadvantage because I came late. I was told to come at 3:45, but it started early. And I was not here this morning because I was at another conference talking about disruptive education. So I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to talk about. Everybody's talking about international school. But I would like to talk about schools in general, talking about our education system, talking about Malaysian schools, whether we've adopted the British system, American system, whatever it is, talking about children, talking about teachers, talking about parents. I would like to look at leadership in education. That's what's missing. Now, when I started Cempaka schools, the first school was in 1983, that's about 36 years ago. I started for my own children. I was working as a diplomat and I joined the PTD and then I resigned and I started a school. So how did I start a school with nothing? Because I was not even a teacher, you know. But I started the school because I wanted the best for my children. So I did my master's. They teach me about management by objective. But then I got my own style, but that was management by terror. So you don't work, you don't do it properly, out you go. Now government people will say, oh, it's not easy to sack a teacher. Well, I'm going to tell you, it's also not easy to sack a teacher in the private sector because you'll be taken to court. And I've been taken to court several times because I've sacked a teacher. But whatever it is, I sack the teacher because I look at the bigger picture. Who's more important, that teacher or the whole school, right? And I also manage by very little money because you've got to find the money, you see? So what makes us great? Why are we different? It is leadership. And what is that leadership? It is mindset, growth mindset. I don't think out of the 10,000 schools we have, they are all bad. I'm sure there are good ones. They may have their constraints, there are weaknesses, there are strengths in the schools, right? But I think the most important thing is the leadership in the schools. What the principals like. Then we talk about, oh, let's pay them more. Because they say, you know, you go to Finland, the teachers are just the same as the engineers and get paid. Yes, I do agree we should pay teachers more. But we don't pay them just because they're teachers. We pay them for performance. So if you come to my school today and you have performed better in say 3 months or 6 months that I've given you on probation, better than the teacher who's been with me for 10 years, you get promoted. You get the bonus, you get whatever it is. So we must look at performance. So leadership in the school, you want to give autonomy to the principals, right? But I do understand the government too, because you cannot trust some of them. Betul, Dato Satinah? Yes. So you say, oh, the minister says no more exams for standard 1, 2 and 3 because we want everybody to go to school to be happy, have fun, no exam. So the teachers, the principals say, oh, bagus lah, no exam, no need to make mark books, no need to do things. That's not what it is. You still have got to assess the children. You still got to follow through the KPIs of the children. What they can do, what they cannot do, what to do the baseline for them. If they're not good in maths, block building subject, you've got to follow them through and so on and so forth. It doesn't mean that there is no assessment, you don't do anything. So again, it's the leadership in the school. Different schools may have different problems. I'll tell you an example of my school. I have one in Cheras and I have one in Damansara. Okay? Mind you, I started a national private school, not an international one.
I dare say that I managed to get these Malaysians to go to international school because this happened in Iskandar. When you brought Marlborough in, and it was at a press conference, and they also invited me to open a school there. And then I told the Marlborough people, why are you here? There's no market for you here. And they said, what? No market? I said, yes, because Malaysians are not allowed to go to international school. And they got such a shock because they didn't know this. Then, Dato Sri Shamsuddin was the Minister of Education. Every time he sees me, he'll run away from me. Because I'll ask him, when are you going to allow Malaysians to go to international school? Because those days you must have only one parent who's a foreigner before you can send your child to international school. Eventually, I met him at a mosque. Not because it so happened when there was Sim Tahlil. He looked at me and said, okay, you can have 30%. And then I said, why 30%? Why not 10? Why not 20? Why not 100%? You keep quiet, actually, 30%. Cukup. But then, because Marlborough came in, government had to open. So suddenly there is now mushrooming of international schools. That's also not good. Because you know what? There will be a price war, they cut corners and so on and so forth. That brings back a bad name to international schools or private schools and so on and so forth, you know. So again, this is this. So the thing is, what I'm trying to say is leadership. You get a good leader. A school is like a business. Because I'm an edupreneur, so it's a business to me. So it's a business. So in order to do this well, your school is your product. You have to sell your school. Government school, oh, it's okay, you get, the children are sent to you. No, you must get all the principals to think, now look, your school is a product. What product are you selling? What product will come out of your schools? What are your strengths? Enrich them. What are your weaknesses? Solve them. Now, if you do that, then you'll be okay. Now, the most important thing, a product of a school should be a learning person. A person who embraces learning. We want our children to be independent learners. It doesn't matter, do IB, A levels, whatever it is. Whatever you want to do. You go to Islamic school, whatever school. But that person must be a learning person. You must be hungry to learn things. You must be an independent learner. Then only you can say that, wow, I am a good educator. Thank you.
Thank you, Freida. Yeah. A lot to learn from, right? Yeah, but the national schools are still bogged down with numbers, etc., etc. But the point about leadership, I think, should be taken up and taken up soon, in the sense of like appointing new principals. Now, for the last 10 years, I think, principals have been appointed, I don't know, there are certain criteria, but perhaps it's time to relook. There are 15 minutes more, right? Right, to relook the criteria for the appointment of principals and put the top senior teachers there so that they can provide the leadership that is sorely needed. Now, I'm going to move on to something, that I think all of you can comment on one by one, maybe 3 minutes per person. Now, this whole idea of collaboration, which was brought up this morning, and Vincent, you imply that there should be exchange of expertise, facilities even between private schools and public schools, so that all together we will raise the level of excellence. Now, maybe the national schools will be a bit slower, but at least we're sharing these resources. And, I have this big thing about each private school adopting 5 national schools in your area and sharing your activities, co-curricular, sports, arts, and so on. Why can't it be done if there is not political will, educational will? Now, maybe Dato Satinah, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Dato. Yes, I do agree with what Dato Halimah was saying. I want to inform actually, rather than being in the National Education Council and a few other organizations, including UPSI, I'm also in the board of University Pendidikan Sultan Idris, which is the higher education. And I just joined about the last few months the Thambi group of school. The Thambi group of school actually is owned by International School Partnership from UK. So what happened actually when they invited me to be on their board, I was telling them I would only agree if you are willing to give help, to give support to our public schools. Otherwise, I'm not interested. So the best part about ISP, because they are foreigners, 100%. So they cannot own the private school, the national curriculum. So the private school are put under a foundation. So the beneficiaries will be our children in Malaysia. So that was actually the biggest attraction when I took that part from them. So what we do actually, we are going to embark, we have already started a little bit on adopting school. Dato Aliman, actually you said it, and because I look at it, our public school really actually in dire need of help from the private school or international school. That is what we want to do. With St. John International School, we have already done that a lot, which I'm also in the board. So these are the things that I think the private school or international school could do in helping government school. But one point I would like to mention, Dato, Freida, I agree with you. Leadership is the most important. But in the public school, one factor that has not been given to them is basically empowerment. To allow them actually to do things creatively in school. So these are the things that we have been begging the minister, and just now YBTO did mention, and YB minister said probably will be later for school. So we feel in the MPPK itself that this empowerment to school teachers needs to be done as soon as possible. Thank you, Dato.
Thank you. Professor Rozainun, you mentioned something about collaborating with universities in order to prepare students from schools to learn better of what is required of them in the universities. Maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Dato. When Dr. Vincent asked or proposed about whether we can go down to the nursery, I like that. And even at the university, we do have these exchange programs with other universities as well. So it's good, like what Dato Halimah was saying just now, that about collaboration, because with collaboration it promotes networking, and with networking you build up, you expand relationship. There's more to it than that. There's friendship, there's the spread of social unity and synergy, all the efforts put together, because 1 + 1 can always get better ideas than you can resolve. So much, in a group. But of course, too many cooks spoil the soup, and therefore this is where we have to be very, very tactful. So on the note of collaboration, yes, it's good for the school children to come to the university, and at the same time, because we do research, we also go down to the schools as well. In fact, we are doing research on cooperatives. That's to develop, edupreneur, Dato Freida, and edupreneur, and that's how we put across and exchange our expertise, experience, skills, competency that we can learn from one another and share together, inshallah.
Thank you. Dr. Freida, any brilliant ideas on collaborative efforts?
We have actually adopted Sekolah Orang Asli in Ulurangan. So we do a lot of programs with them, and one of the programs we do is entrepreneurship. It's not so much having a cooperative or something like that, but to understand the idea of things like what is the vision. So they study companies. These are 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds. They study the vision of companies, then they go and see whether the companies, like say McDonald's, what is this vision, and what are the McDonald's like here, the outlets here, and they come back and they give us a write-up and so on and so forth. Like for instance, they also talk about their own vision, what is their vision of the best product that they like, and so on. So we teach them entrepreneurship, about 80 hours a year, and we do this with the Sekolah Orang Asli as well. And of course, we teach them English and so on and so forth. So that's done more or less like a CSR. But I think if we want to do this, really do this well, we cannot go on like, say, private schools adopt public schools. It cannot be done with no money. Because I think you must realize that education is expensive. People must put priority on education. The problem is, it is all the government. Government. School, government. University, government. Job, government. You know? But even people who go to my school, of course they must have some money, but they're not really at the top social strata of people, you know, when we talk about elitists. I don't like the idea to say that international schools or private schools are elitist schools. But I think they're for people who really believe education is important. Education is priority. So therefore they start saving money for the children's education. And because a group of people feel that they need to survive on their own, they've got a very keen sense of survival. So they put education at the top. But some other people put education somewhere else because they say, never mind, the government can take care of it. And then they become the so-called professionals, educators, criticizing the government. You know? So I think if you want us, private sector, I don't know about Vincent, but I think many people who have been in private education would like to work with the government, would like to work, but we cannot work with fresh air and sunshine. Because you see, we have developed this for more than 3-4 decades of our own IP. So you must respect that. Betul, Vincent? You can go and do it, but I think I need something. Because otherwise I can't go and tell my teachers to do something extra and not give them anything. Now talking about just now the expatriate, that's also the fault of Malaysians. They say, they come to Cempaka International School, they say, that's not international school. The children are not white, the teachers are not white. And I said, I'm not white enough. You know? But the point is this, it's Malaysians, we always think the Mak Saleh is better. But I can tell you, I've worked with many expatriates from all over the world actually, you know. I tell you, the Asians are the best.
Yay!
Yeah. They might not have the accent, Queen's English. But then you go to Edinburgh to do medicine, how do they speak?
Exactly.
You go to Ireland, how do they speak? They don't speak like Queen Elizabeth, but you accept them because they're white. And then when we get teachers who are Asians, they don't speak Queen's English, but good grammar and so on and so forth, tak mau, because not putih enough. Then you got to pay the putih people how much? 10 times more. 3 times more. 3 times more. No, in my school we pay according to your performance. Whether you're white, black, or yellow, whatever it is.
Right. Anyway, I think this collaboration is a wonderful idea, and it can be picked up by a dynamic minister, a dynamic corporate sector that is prepared to have as its CSR, you know, this kind of partnership between private schools and national schools. Yeah, I think we shall have a movement to move the corporate sector to provide, to help the government in providing the resources and so on. Yeah? Yes, Vincent, would you like to add to that? Or Amy? Anne? Sorry, Anne.
All right, I think a couple of things here. One is that, yes, oopsie, I was at a conference asked to speak there. They actually asked, because to provide teachers to the international schools, what is it that we're looking for? And I told them, I said, first, English has to be very strong. But the second thing is, yes, we're talking about teacher training and so on, right? Teachers have to be trained. I personally have a problem with that one because I think the teacher training is just too old. Not just in our country, even in the countries that are progressive in education, they will tell you the education system is still behind. So it all boils down to the teacher training. In our country, all the government school teachers are teacher trained. So what in the world is the problem? Why are we not putting our kids there? Why are we choosing to take them out of that system? So one of the key things is this: if you really look at what is being trained in school, is this, in teacher training is this, we are training people to teach from the book. The exploration is there, but primarily they are trained to teach physics. They don't know how to apply physics. So everything that higher ed was talking about, IR 4.0, IoT, no more Wi-Fi now, they're talking about Li-Fi, I just found out about it. But the point is, until and unless the teachers know how to apply the subject they're teaching, we will never be able to catch up. So, and then if you really think about Asia, if the kids are straight A kids, how many of the parents would allow the child or the son or daughter to say, I'm going to choose to teach? Yeah. They're going to go into engineering, they're going to go into law, biotech, biomedical sciences, whatever. So where, or even communications and business studies and so on. So where do you find good people? I go to engineering. We go to lawyers. We go to, that's where you find the students who know how to apply the subjects. So the thing is that to them, sometimes you talk to them, they don't think they can teach. But you just give them some guidance and training, you can get them there. So this is where it has to go. It has to be practical. That more than anything else.
Right, last words from Vincent.
Thank you.
3 minutes.
We'll try my best. You're asking a teacher to control how long they speak. That's really hard. And sit down and talk at the same time. We stand for hours on end. Thank you very much for that comment about the schools. If anybody ever wants to, come visit me, see what happens in an IB classroom. The moment you've seen how crazy that program is, everything they were talking about, values education, skills development, it's all integrated in. Morals do not get taught in morals class, they get taught in bio class. You don't apply morals, as my pastor used to say, you're not a good Christian on Sunday. It doesn't work that way. You've got to integrate right throughout. And that's what the IB does. It's right throughout. We talk about STEM, the combination of 4 disciplines. We've been combining all 8 disciplines simultaneously for years. So come on over, the system is already there. If we could take that kind of level of teaching, and that's why I actually said kindergarten, because the primary school teachers are able to wield that kind of skill in teaching. We're not talking about knowledge in physics, by the way, just a skill of teaching. If you can take that skill in teaching and give that to the professors who are teaching teachers how to teach, now we have a difference. You can't have a professor who stands up and yells at people and just talks for 1 hour and expect the other guy that's listening to learn about inquiry. You can't teach inquiry like this. And that's unfortunately the way that most of our education system works. They just can't figure it out. Now, in terms of collaboration, I think that was your question. When the MOE embarked on the MYP project, they put in MYP schools, we were there. We adopted 1 school and they succeeded. When the government calls for training programs, we've always given our trainer from UCF to go and train teachers for free. Recently, the minister talked about bringing MUN to our public schools. I just ran an MUN training conference about 3 days ago where we brought 100 kids to our school to train them on how to run an MUN conference. And that we're doing as free. The thing is, I'm not a flower, and being the only guy here, it's very interesting that I'm saying that. I'm not a flower, I can't live on rain and sunshine, and I totally subscribe to that. But I think I'm very fortunate to be on a group of 3 owners over here. My father is the one that started it, not me. And I'm very proud to say I'm going to carry on that thought process. When you've received so much from the community that you have served for so long, give back and give back unconditionally. It doesn't matter whether they know how to pay you back or not, just do it. Because what comes around goes around. You've already received, somebody's paid it forward to you, and you've received so much. And that's for the attitude of our school, our organization, is really to give back as much as we can. That's why we're building this teacher professional body. It doesn't give us anything. In fact, it destroys our model in a lot of crazy ways. But we're building it. Why? Because it's time to give back. And unless more and more of the corporate industry realize that they're not a profiteering part of this equation, again, they did not come and join the Malaysian society to reap profits of the industry, but that they are a responsible member of that community, there to, yes, earn benefits, but also to give back and enrich the community. We are not going to have a sustainable world.
Great last words, Vincent. Thank you very much. Now, we just have like 7 minutes. No, now it's 6 minutes for 3 questions. Short questions. 3 of you there. That's it.
Please approach the mic and...
Just a short question and address it to whoever you want. Short question, no comments, please.
Thank you. I'm Vincent from University College Fairview, the extension arm of Fairview International School, and our core business is teacher training. I would like to add to Dr. Vincent's point just now. It's about teacher licensing. Teacher licensing is very common in many countries, not in Malaysia. I mean, referring to public schools or even private schools. We don't have teacher licensing to ensure the quality of our teachers. And this, I think, is a problem, since we do not have a professional body like accountant or lawyers. Now, my question is for Dr. Satinah, and she said that our education system is not working. Our education system is a failure. I really felt I was smashed just now. I mean, we were part of the education system. I was from University of Malaysia, and we were in the business of teacher training. And our business was to produce good teachers, good graduates, and also good scholars in the field of education.
Thank you. Yeah, Dato Satinah, would you like to answer that?
My question is, what are your benchmarks or criteria for making that kind of judgment? And also, question number two, what are your suggestions to rectify the problems that you have raised? As number 3 problems or 3 issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Were you here from the very beginning when I spoke?
Yeah.
I did not say, in the first place, I stand to be corrected. I would be the last person to say that the system has failed. That was my contention. The perception of people to say that comes and inform us that the system of education has failed, I beg to differ. Otherwise, why would I want to work 3-4 times a week in the Ministry of Education, Putrajaya, to work on the system? But what I'm trying to tell you, when people think the system has failed with all the criticism and so on, they were not aware that actually it is a long journey in improving our system. From the Razak report, the Rahman Khalid report, and we have the Education Act, and I was also very privileged to have been there, and now we are looking at the system. Please don't quote me wrongly. I will be the last person. What I'm trying to say actually that people can see a lot of things in a very easy manner, but when you're in it, you will realize it is not as easy as that. And I certainly would want to tell you, I came from the government school, I went to the University of Malaya, I graduated, and I've earned and acquired all the knowledge, and the system is not a failing system, but we need to bridge the gap, the loops that we have in between, so that we will have a better system for this current generation. Please, excuse me, okay? Thank you.
Yes, next question, questioner. Yeah, please.
Hi, my name is Cheryl, and I'm from Tech Services. I'm also here representing as an alumni and teach from Malaysia. So, the work that I do with the National Trust School program that goes to schools to help school leaders as well as school teachers to continue their professional development. I do believe that teachers are the key component to improve student outcome. So to Dr. Vincent as well as Anna, that you all mentioned a lot of professional development. What do you think is needed for any organization, be it a kindergarten or even a higher learner institution, to focus on professional development in order for them to be a learning organization? Because it's not just the students that need to continuously learn and be a lifelong learner, so do teachers.
A quick answer, please. I think the minister is already here. So, yeah.
Sure thing.
Actually, I think my question builds up on hers. So maybe you guys can answer since we have 7 minutes. Hi. Hi, my name is Jasmine and I'm from the private education sector, but I'm formerly from Teach from Malaysia as well. I'm currently into teacher development and teacher training. So I move away from teacher training because I think training is an old word. I think we're going for development now since everyone is talking about development. My question is to both the public and private teacher training sector. So first question is, how do you define quality in teaching and excellence, especially in the private, people who are dealing with UPSI and training, particularly and predominantly public school teachers, serving for the public. So we have all the Guru Cemerlang rubric, we have all of that, but A, is it transparent for the teachers themselves to actually understand, and B, does the school leadership know that? And as the same question goes to the private education. We have regulations like Ofsted, Ofqual, and all of that. So how do you measure it? And then B, is there a way in terms of collaboration that we can both talk together, because both these things are good. So maybe the public-private partnership will come from there. That's a suggestion, not a question. Thank you.
Quick answers, yeah.
The fastest I can say is read up on John Hattie, please. It's a guy who does research on visible learning. The measure of good quality education is the student learning. So basically you can design any standard you want, but you have to keep on being flexible about it, and you watch the student. Now when people go in to watch a teacher's performance, they stare at the teacher. The argument I'd say is, why are you looking at the teacher? You should be looking at the kid. It doesn't matter whether the teacher sings and dances up there. Does the kid learn? So you point your camera at the kids and stare at them. Don't bother what he's doing. Are the kids attentive learning? Are they developing? Are they growing? That's your measure of good quality learning. Of course, then you make sure you get your standards. You've got to have what happens in the classroom, but don't forget, good quality education is not in the classroom. It's inside classroom, outside classroom, professional development. Just look at any one of the standards out there. There's tons of them. The Australians have done a really great job in doing this. I highly recommend the work by ACL. So I refer there. I refer to John Hattie and ACL, and also the Chartered College of Teachers from the UK as excellent examples of great standards. You set that, and then you work towards that, but don't be naive to think that that's not going to change. That's my advice.
Last words, Anne.
Now, the thing is about the students' learning is actually about getting them the right behaviors, right habits, and the right character, attitudes. If you can work on that, in fact, teachers should be trained primarily, like the major focus. Right now, we're looking at teaching them classroom management, etc., etc. But when you want to look into the future, those teachers need to know how to move the kids. And that is where you need to work on connecting with them, knowing how to move them emotionally, and working on their attitudes. The minute that is done, the learning will take place. So currently, the system of education, the training, is very focused on the theory, all right? So until and unless we fix it, you cannot move it forward. It's very, very tough, all right? So that's what I have to say. And if you get it right, you look at, what you're looking at is the video on the kids. Actually, we have a list of criteria for the teachers. Are your kids happy to see you? You know? Are you able to get them to love a subject they don't like? Yeah.
Thank you so much. We'll have to close now because the minister is waiting outside. So let's give our panelists a round of applause.